Hey everybody, I just returned from this year's NATO Summit in the Netherlands. And one of the interesting things that one gets to do at these NATO summits, this being now my second one that I've attended and covered, is pose a question to the President of Turkey, or Türkiye, as it's now formally called, President Erdogan. So on the final day, in the final gathering of this year's summit, I was able to get a question into Erdogan at his press conference. He called on me and I asked him a question. So here it is.
Thank you, Mr. President. Given your views on the Gaza situation, what is your opinion of President Trump's proposal for the U.S. to, quote, take over Gaza and turn it into some sort of military protectorate and expel all the remaining Palestinians so that Trump and his business partners can construct casinos and resorts? Have you discussed that proposal with President Trump? And in addition, what is your position on Trump's relationship with Israel writ large? Trump likes to boast about how he's the most pro-Israel president of all time. He said, God bless Israel when he bombed Iran over the weekend. He's touted how exceptionally close the Israeli bombing offensive against Iran was coordinated with the United States. He's expedited munitions to Israel. So, given your strong views on Israel's conduct, do those views extend to the United States and President Trump being an abettor of that Israeli conduct?
Akşam
In the
11
evening,
itibaren
well, as
Sayın
of
Trump'la
11,
görüşmemiz oldu.
11:30, we had a meeting with President Trump yesterday for an hour and a half. We had the opportunity to sit down and talk, but
Özellikle
during
de
these talks, we actually
Gazze'nin sahil boylarının
focused on the
sizin
coastline of
ifade ettiğiniz
Gaza
şekilde
and
kumarhaneler olması
how,
gündeme gelmedi.
I mean, we didn't talk about casinos, as you suggested, on the coastline of Gaza. If this were raised, I think people would know how I would react to such a proposal. My standing, my
Duruşun belli olduğuna göre Sayın Trump öyle akıllı bir
stature
insandır ki
is quite apparent. President Trump is quite a smart guy, and he knows what question to ask to whom, and this never was discussed between the two of us. So, thank you.
So as you can see, he artfully evaded the question. One of the supreme prerogatives of this entire summit, if not the supreme prerogative, actually I should correct myself, definitely the supreme prerogative of this NATO summit, was for every member state to do what was ever humanly possible to avoid antagonizing Donald Trump, and additionally to bend over backwards to flatter and to placate Donald Trump. And Erdogan follows in that trend there. He starts out his remarks at this press conference with a vehement denunciation of Israel for its conduct in Gaza and otherwise. Obviously, it would stand to reason that if he's going to so vehemently denounce Israel, that the denunciation could extend to the country that is chiefly enabling Israel, not just in Gaza, but in the whole variety of other theaters that Israel is waging seemingly perpetual war in. And that would be the United States. Donald Trump had just joined officially a Israeli bombing offensive against Iran, bombed Iran, etc. So to exempt Trump and the U.S. from any criticism, even as he's leveling that criticism so ardently at Israel, seems to be a little bit of a gaping, glaring contradiction. And so that's what I wanted to potentially draw out in that question. And I was thinking about it because in 2022, when I attended the NATO Summit in Spain, I was also able to ask Erdogan a question. And although it wasn't explicitly conscious in my mind, looking back, I was sort of doing a similar thing in that I wanted to point out a discrepancy or a contradiction potentially between Erdogan's approach, which is unique in NATO. Turkey is a bit of an outlier or an anomaly within NATO for a variety of reasons. And in 2022, Erdogan was still the only major NATO country leader who was advocating for some sort of diplomatic intervention in the Ukraine war. He was attempting to mediate between Zelensky and Putin. And this very palpably contrasted with the approach being taken by, for example, the United States at the time. And so I wanted to ask Erdogan a question that might be able to draw out that contradiction or that tension. And it was a little bit more of an amusing exchange. I ended up getting profiled by the Turkish national broadcaster at this exchange, but it was sort of born of a similar impulse that I have in how I approach these Q&A type opportunities. So here was that exchange from 2022 between myself and Erdogan. Hello. You are one of the very few NATO leaders who seems to have even brought up the prospect of pursuing a diplomatic solution for the war in Ukraine. Other leaders like Joe Biden, Boris Johnson, they're emphasizing almost exclusively the military component. Biden just this afternoon announced new missile systems being deployed to Ukraine by the U.S. What accounts for this difference in philosophy? And do you think the path being chosen by the U.S. and the U.K. is overly aggressive and is going to prolong the war?
Bakalım benim dilimden anlayacak.
Well, I will try to respond, and hopefully you will understand my language through interpretation. The proof is in the eating. There is a method and there's a style of everybody doing certain things. Do you have such an expression or a similar expression? Sizin söylediğinizi efendim, proof is in the eating diye bir söz var. Boris is a close friend of mine. It's a good friend of mine. And he has his own perspective. He has his own style of doing things. And I have my own style of things. Here, we have to establish a politics based on a balance. And I need to believe that diplomacy should be pursued. And if we take steps forward on a win-win scenario, everybody will enjoy more auspicious decisions and results, I believe. So that's why we're talking to Mr. Zelensky and Mr. Putin on a continuous basis. And once a week or every 10 days, we have telephone conversations with them, out of which I believe we will cultivate some results.
So the Erdogan press conference at this year's summit came right after Donald Trump's press conference. And through a series of strangely and amusingly fortuitous events, I was in prime position to be able to potentially ask Trump a question. I documented my strenuous efforts to attempt to do so in a Substack post that I published about 2 days ago now. So I'll link to that in the description box. Go read that. Unfortunately, I was not able to ask a question, or rather wasn't able to get Trump's attention sufficient that he conclusively called on me, although I think he arguably might have called on me on at least 2 occasions. But hey, what are you going to do? I did my best. So I still have some more material from the NATO Summit that I want to put out either today or tomorrow. So keep a lookout for that. Go to mtracey.net. And that'll do it for now. So thanks for watching.